Hi, my name is Mark Bernard. I'm a monetary economist. In this video, I want to talk about the Polish election, the presidential election, and analyze it, an analysis of it, what happened. I want to tell you that first, I'm a Polish citizen, and I've lived in Poland much of my life, and much of my family is born in Poland, and certainly my ancestry. So I think I can speak fairly authoritatively about Poland, the political process, and the election, although I was born in America. What happened in the election was this. There were two candidates, Karol Nawrocki, and he won. We'll just call him Karol. And the other one, Rafał Trzaskowski, and he lost. Okay? We'll just call him Raphael for both your and mine benefit, because even I have pronunciation problems in Polish. So Raphael was more the European integration, liberal, and very pro-Ukraine in the sense that he wants to see Ukraine in NATO. He wants to see Ukraine as part of the European Union. I voted for Raphael, okay? And I'm going to go through that process. Karol is somebody who's more Eurosceptic, NATO skeptic, and it sounds a little bit like the president, in the White House right now, Donald Trump, but not necessarily. First, let me explain the process of voting. What happened? Were there any external influences? And then the powers of the presidency in Poland and what this means for Ukraine. So, again, the Polish president is not like the U.S. president in any way, shape, or form. It's a combination of honorific and executive powers. He can veto the Polish parliament, this SEJM, the SEM, but that can be overridden at 2/3 majority. 3/5 majority, which can happen. He has powers of, meeting with external powers, foreign powers, and, appointing things and judges, and the scope of it is a little bit more limited than the American president. American president has more power. Speaker of the House is more like the parliament, the prime minister. But the power shifted, in Poland more towards the parliament, which I kind of like for various reasons. Obviously, what's happening in the White House. He is conservative. Now, but before I get into his positions and on Ukraine, I want to tell you about the voting process. Okay, so when you go to vote, first of all, you have to register where you live to vote. You can get an exemption, but it's a more complicated registration. In fact, when I first came to Poland, I was like homeless, okay, because it's a complicated system way back then to register. And on my identity card, I put like bezdomny, which is homeless. Because in theory, there are some homeless Polish people, but, not really, because they have a different family structure here and social network. But I put it on my dowód, my identity card. But now I have an identity card, and I have a home, which I own in Poland, and they have to check this and match it against the records, and they have it all computerized and check your ID. When you go there, it's actually on a paper ballot, which I like. It's not on some big tech computer, and I'm living down the street from the IT Silicon Valley in Krakow. They have this university called AGH. They certainly could do it on a computer, but they prefer paper ballot, and you exit off. And there's a series of checks and balances all the way through that allows you to say, we can count and recount all we want, and we know that there's no behind-the-scenes, quote-unquote, hacking. And it is checked and overseen. So if the vote count in the end says that, Karol won the election and Raphael lost, with fair amount of confidence, great confidence, I say that's true. I like this paper ballot. I don't know why. I just trust it. Second of all, but that doesn't mean there was no external influence, like from Russia. If I was the Tsar of Russia, I'd probably support Karol, because he's more skeptical towards this Ukrainian relation. Then you say, well, it's all bad. No, it is not. Karol, let me tell you, you're talking to Shaggy Rogers living out of a van, hippie here. No, I'm not really living out of the van. This is just some random man in my YouTube video. I live in an apartment and it's all legal and solid and it's a great place to live. But you're talking to obviously somebody who's fairly open-minded and easygoing. And I wouldn't say I'm in any way aligned with the policies of Trump or what's going on in the White House at all. I'm the opposite. But this guy, Karol, I keep on saying, the newly elected president, which will take, he won on a slim margin, like 51 to 49, but it was even closer. It was like 50 point something to 49 point something. He'll take power on August 12th, so it's a little bit ways off. As conservative as he is, he's nothing like Trump. Okay? Even though Trump and him, they shake hands and smile at each other, et cetera, et cetera. He is almost the opposite. The guy's got a PhD from my university in Gdansk. And then he's got like a master's after that in business relations. So he's an academic. What he is, he's a historical, he's just embedded in this history. And he is not the media hype nationalism of, the White House we have right now. So it's a very different idea. And the other thing you want to know about him, he's on Moscow's wanted list. He's on a watch list and a wanted list for pulling down communist statues. He wrote his PhD dissertation on this protest to this communism, to the Soviet Union. I think in this 1970-80 timeframe, that was his dissertation he defended. He is staunchly and calls Russia right in front of the cameras an imperialistic nation. He is very staunchly anti-Russian. That being said, he's more conservative or skeptical about European integration with Ukraine than even in Poland. I personally think as an economist that that's a mistake, because when you throw up tariffs or barriers or trade, like I've explained, it causes inflation, it causes less than optimal consumer, something called a consumer effect and a producer effect, and it's a waste of resources because you had something called deadweight loss. So I wouldn't say that that's an optimal solution economically, but again, the power resides in the prime minister in Poland and not in the president, and it resides in the parliament. Okay. So we've got somebody who's a historian who's going to be questioning, the relations with Ukraine until they, he's got some historical problems with them, et cetera, as a historian. But my take on that is it's nothing like Trump. And, I wish I could have a conversation with him, because the conversation would be, you could look at Germany, you could look at the Roman Empire, you could look at the Swedes, you could pick a problem with anybody. And even Poland, they, in the words of one of my friends who's a great Polish patriot, he said, Poland wasn't purely innocent either. So you could pick, you could find, and this is the type of thing that the Kremlin has been amplifying, these ancient 100-year-old, wounds. Again, like I said, we could have a problem with the peaceful Swedes because, Sweden, there was a time, the Great Deluge, where they invaded Poland, but that's not the way you go. You go forward and you look at the ideals and not history. I think that's his main problem. He's looking at history, stuck in the past. He's like somebody who's just ruminating on all the problems in his past. And, instead of looking to the future and these ideals of freedom, justice, and liberty. That being said, he does have some values. He's got a family, he's got kids, and, he supports these traditional values. And that's in contrast with Trump. I don't know, he's made his money on casinos and I don't know how many wives he has and has cheated on or whatever. There's a different moral character about that. So this nuanced difference between the current guy in the White House and Karol, the future Polish president, it's huge. Again, this guy is a historian and he's going to be cautious, but he's not foolish. He's not enamored in any way, shape, or form with Russia. He's very anti-Russian, anti-Kremlin. So, Duda, the current president, he's just going to be probably an extension of his ideas. So we'll see when he gets in there. But it looks like, I prefer the other guy because I'm for this integration. But it doesn't look like it's not. You have to understand it's not the same thing. And so, I can take some conservative values. I'm a family man, and I can take some, ideas of we live in a great country and this is a great country. I can take some of that. I believe all people are equal. I don't believe everybody thinks their country is the best. So I'm not a nationalist. I love America. I love Poland. I love Ukraine. We're all God's children. But coming from a hippie, I purposely let my hair down. I look like something like the Elf King or something out of, uh, Lord of the Rings. When I was young and beautiful next to a hippie van. I did that for a reason, because if I can say that, then you guys can rest easy that Ukraine is going to stay on course. It's not a major shift in policy. That's to be seen, but we'll see. And remember, he's on the watch list of Moscow because they do not like him because he's so anti-Russian. And Ukraine's going to win no matter what, because they're standing on their own 2 feet. They're almost like, I'll use this metaphor again because I'm using it at the end. When I play chess with like a grandmaster or a master, it's almost like their pieces, their horses, their knights, they have extra moves. They jump extra. Somehow I didn't even know how they got onto the other side of the field or the board. And this is the way Ukraine plays. It's almost like the troops that they have and the tools that they have, it almost like has extra moves, extra power, because they're metaphorically the grandmasters of this conflict. Ukraine's going to win. But anyway, that's my analysis of the Polish election, coming from a Polish citizen who voted and here living in Poland. Have a beautiful day. Thank you very much.